On April 20th, 1999, in Columbine, Colorado, two students, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, carried out a brutal attack at Columbine High School. They killed 13 people, including 12 students and one teacher, and injured 23 others. Most victims died in the school's library, where the attackers later took their own lives. At the time, it was the deadliest school shooting in U.S. history. And how they planned everything on that final night, I'll tell you about it later in this video. But the question still lingers. Why did they do all this? What was the reason? To understand what led to the Columbine shooting, we have to look into the lives of Harris and Klebold. Eric Harris was born in April 9, 1981, in Wichita, Kansas. Harris's father worked in the U.S. Air Force, which is why his family moved around frequently. In 1993, they finally settled in Colorado. The same year, in 1993, his father retired from the military. For the first 3 years in the Littleton area, the Harris family lived in rented homes. Then, in 1996, they bought a house located just south of Columbine High School. Harris's father took a job with Flight Safety Services Corporation, while his mother began working as a caterer. Eric started attending Columbine High School in 1995 as a freshman. On the other hand, Dylan Klebold was born on September 11, 1981, in Lakewood, Colorado, and raised in a middle-class family in Littleton. His father was a geophysicist, and his mother worked with people with disabilities. He was smart, shy, and part of the Gifted Students program. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold both started attending Columbine High School in 1995 as freshmen. Before that, they had met in 7th grade at Ken Carroll Middle School in 1993 and quickly became friends. Both Harris and Klebold started working as cooks at Blackjack Pizza in 1998, located about a mile from Columbine High School. Harris was later promoted to shift leader. They were into computers and took a bowling class at school. Eric Harris was seen by some as charismatic, but he had a dark side. He bragged about manipulating people, showed quick anger, made bomb threats, and wrote violent stories by junior year. Dylan Klebold was known for being extremely shy and nervous, especially around strangers and women. In his final year, his behavior changed. He became short-tempered and had sudden angry outbursts. As their high school years went on, both Harris and Klebold started showing more troubling behavior. In 1998, they were arrested for breaking into a van and stealing electronic equipment. Instead of jail time, they were sent to a juvenile diversion program. They seemed to improve on the surface, attending anger management classes and doing community service. But behind closed doors, things were different. During this time, Harris kept an online blog where he posted violent thoughts, threats, and plans to build bombs. He also wrote about his hatred for people and his desire to kill. Klebold also wrote disturbing things in his journal, often expressing deep sadness, anger, and suicidal thoughts. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold couldn't legally buy guns because they were underage. So, in November 1998, Dylan asked his friend Robin Anderson, who had just turned 18, to buy the weapons for them. At a Colorado gun show, she purchased 2 shotguns and a high-point carbine rifle. No background check was needed because of the gun show loophole. After getting the guns, Klebold sawed off his double-barrel shotgun to make it shorter, while Harris did the same with his pump-action shotgun. They also got a Tech 9 semi-automatic handgun from a man named Mark Maines, who sold it illegally with the help of Philip Duran. In the 2 weeks leading up to the attack, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were deeply focused on preparing their deadly plan. They recorded what are now known as the basement tapes, videos where they spoke openly about their hatred, their anger, and their intentions to carry out a violent attack on Columbine High School. In these tapes, they even named people they disliked and said farewell to their families, as if they knew what they were about to do was final. During this period, they didn't just talk, they took action. Around the same time, the boys were making bombs in the Harris family garage, using propane tanks, metal pipes, and CO2 canisters with fuses ignited by match tips. Locals later reported hearing strange noises and glass breaking from the garage, signs of their dangerous activities. Alongside bomb making, they practiced shooting their guns in secluded wooded areas, honing their aim and building confidence. In the days before the attack, Harris and Klebold purchased ammunition and hardware supplies to complete their arsenal. Their careful preparations showed how serious and determined they were to carry out the attack exactly as planned. On the morning of April 20th, 1999, just weeks before their graduation, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold arrived at Columbine High School with a terrifying plan. Dressed in heavy trench coats to hide their weapons, they met early in the parking lot and skipped their usual morning classes. Before the chaos began, they had placed 2 large propane bombs in the school cafeteria, set to explode at 11:17 a.m., just before lunch when the cafeteria would be full. Their goal was to cause massive destruction and force students to flee outside, where they planned to ambush survivors with guns and pipe bombs. They had also rigged explosives in their cars to detonate later, aiming to kill first responders and add to the devastation. That morning, a student named Brooks Brown, who had recently patched up his friendship with Harris after a falling out, saw Harris and asked why he was skipping classes. Harris gave a chilling reply, "It doesn't matter anymore," then added, "I like you now. Go home." Feeling uneasy, Brooks left the school grounds. At 11:19 a.m., just 2 minutes after the bombs were supposed to explode, Harris and Klebold began shooting students near the west entrance of the school. When their bombs in the cafeteria failed to detonate, they didn't hesitate. Panic erupted as students ran for their lives. The attackers moved through the hallways, firing at anyone in sight, until they reached the library, where many had gathered during a study period. For about 10 minutes, Harris and Klebold unleashed their worst violence, killing 12 students and 1 teacher. The library became the darkest and most tragic scene of the massacre. After carrying out their deadly attack at Columbine High School, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold returned to the library, the place where they had already killed most of their victims. It was about 12:02 p.m., and inside the library were 56 students and staff being held hostage. Luckily, 34 of them were unharmed because they had escaped when Harris and Klebold had left the library earlier. Investigators later found that Harris and Klebold had enough bullets to kill everyone inside the library if they had wanted to. By then, they had already killed 13 people and injured 24, and most of the deaths happened right there in the library. Harris and Klebold returned to the library, possibly to watch their car bombs explode. These bombs were set to detonate at noon, but luckily, they never went off. Instead, the 2 opened fire through the west-facing windows at police officers outside. Thankfully, no one was hurt during this brief exchange of gunfire. A few minutes later, they moved closer to a table near the bookshelves where a badly wounded student named Patrick Ireland lay barely conscious. Another injured student, Lisa Kreutz, was also there but was unable to move. At around 12:08 p.m., the attackers took their own lives, ending the massacre. Lisa Kreutz later recalled hearing something like, "You in the library," just before the final moments. Eric Harris sat down with his back against a bookshelf and shot himself through the roof of his mouth with a shotgun. Dylan Klebold knelt nearby and shot himself in the left temple with a handgun. When the first reports of gunfire came in, local police and emergency responders rushed to the scene within minutes. However, confusion and a lack of clear communication quickly became problems. At the time, active shooter response protocols were not well established, and officers were trained to wait for specialized units before entering dangerous situations. As a result, the first officers on the scene focused on securing the perimeter rather than going inside to confront the shooters. SWAT teams began arriving shortly afterward, but it took over 3 hours to fully enter and clear the school due to fears of additional shooters and potential explosives inside. Meanwhile, terrified students and staff were trapped inside classrooms and hiding places, unsure if help was coming. Evacuating those who could escape was also incredibly difficult, as police had to guide them through hallways that were still considered dangerous. Many students ran out of the building with their hands over their heads, unsure of what was happening or whether they were safe. The delay in entering the school was heavily criticized in the aftermath and led to major changes in how police across the U.S. respond to school shootings today. When police finally entered the library at approximately 2:30 p.m., they found Harris and Klebold dead, surrounded by the terrible destruction and loss of life they had caused. Their suicides marked the tragic end of one of the deadliest school shootings in American history. In the weeks following the Columbine High School massacre, multiple investigations were launched to understand how such a tragedy could have occurred and whether it could have been prevented. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office led the main criminal investigation, collecting hundreds of pieces of evidence, including surveillance footage, witness statements, and the personal journals and videos left behind by Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. These materials revealed the depth of the planning, the hatred in their writings, and how long they had been preparing for the attack. Investigators discovered that the boys had acquired their firearms through a friend and had been building homemade bombs in Harris's garage for months. A significant point of controversy emerged when it was revealed that the sheriff's office had previously received complaints about Eric Harris's violent website and threats, but failed to take serious action. The Columbine High School shooting wasn't just a tragic day in American history. It was a wake-up call. It showed us how deep pain can go unnoticed, how warning signs can be missed, and how easy access to weapons can turn dark thoughts into devastating actions. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And most importantly, let us know your thoughts in the comments. What lessons do you think the world still needs to learn from Columbine?